When you buy a digital camera, you generally get three lens choices. The first is the regular lens that it comes with. It's a wide angle to short telephoto. Now the problem with this lens is it doesn't zoom out very far. And if you're trying to shoot sports or you're on vacation, you really want to zoom in on something, you kind of go, well, this doesn't zoom out very much. So that is kind of a limitation of just getting that single, the kit lens, they call it, the one that just, comes standard with the camera. So your second choice is to get the 2 zoom lens kit. And that's where you get the camera body and 2 lenses. One of them is that first one. It goes from wide angle to short telephoto. And the second one goes from short telephoto to long telephoto. So with the first one, you can go wide angle to short telephoto, but you must put the second one on if you really want to zoom out to capture something. Now the problem with the 2 lens set is when you want a wide angle shot, you always have the telephoto on. When you want to really zoom out, you've got the lens that doesn't zoom out that far. So you're always having to change lenses. You always have to carry the second lens. And when you're changing lenses, there's a chance you're going to be getting some dust on the image sensor. So most camera manufacturers do offer a 2 lens set, and it is an economical way to get started, but it can be kind of inconvenient. When I talk to people in my workshops, I suggest that they consider an all-in-one lens. And the people in the workshop who have had a 2 lens set and then gone to an all-in-ones go, yes, that is great. That is so great. It's one of the best things I ever did. It just makes life so much easier when I'm taking photos. So an all-in-one lens goes from wide angle to long telephoto. It covers that whole range in one lens. So you can be traveling and shooting a really wide angle shot and then zooming in and zooming as long as the lens will go and then anywhere in between. With a 2 lens set, you always have to have that, carry that second lens with you. You're always changing lenses, and it just makes life so much more convenient with an all-in-one lens. Now, if you have an interchangeable lens camera, an SLR, or a mirrorless camera, most manufacturers that I know do offer an all-in-one lens. Now here you can see an all-in-one lens zoomed in and zoomed out. You can see when it's zoomed out, it zooms out pretty darn far. So when you buy your camera, you can buy it with the wide angle to short telephoto, which is going to kind of limit you. You can buy it with the wide angle to short telephoto and then the short telephoto to long telephoto 2 lens set, which is a little bit inconvenient, but it's a good way to start. It's a more economical way to start. Or you can buy the camera body with an all-in-one lens, which is a lot more convenient when taking photos. Now, sometimes you will have a choice of all-in-one lenses, one that will go from wide angle to, sort of long telephoto, and another that will go from wide angle to really long telephoto. So you may want to look at the choice for that. Do I want the wide angle to a medium telephoto or the wide angle to a long telephoto is another choice that you can make. Now, all-in-one lenses usually cost around $600. So that's $600 in addition to probably the $500 or more that you're spending on your camera body. So if you can't afford that right then, you might start with the 2 lens set. If you can afford it, you may want to get the body plus the all-in-one lens. One lens that I would suggest you consider getting is a large opening lens. A large opening lens gives you a bigger opening, which helps you blur the heck out of the background, helps you shoot in low light, and also since it lets in more light, it helps you use a faster shutter speed, which helps you stop action indoors. Now to get a large opening lens, you can buy it as a zoom lens or a prime lens. A zoom lens zooms in and out from different focal lengths. A prime lens doesn't zoom. Now, if you buy a zoom lens with a large opening, it's usually going to cost you $1,400 to $2,600 or more. Now, if you're looking for a more cost-effective way to get that large opening lens to be able to blur the background, shoot in low light, and help stop action in low light, you may want to consider getting a prime lens instead. You can get a prime lens with a large opening for about $250. Now, when you are looking at prime lenses with large openings, a lot of times you'll see the same lens millimeter in a 1.4 versus a 1.8 opening. Now, 1.4 lenses are usually double or almost triple the cost of a 1.8 lens. Usually the 1.4 lenses are also a little heavier, so if you'd like to save some money and go with a little lighter weight lens, you may want to choose the 1.8. Now, when you look at the prime lens that's the same millimeter with a 1.4 and a 1.8 version online, you'll see that both of them generally get 5 stars each, so they're both great lenses. Now, if you decide I want to go with the 1.4, I want to spend more money, but I feel I'm getting a better lens, you can. But if you go with the 1.8, you're still getting a great lens and you're saving money. But you can look these up online and do all your research and decide how you'd like to go. I own a 1.8 lens that's one of my favorites and does an incredible job. Now a zoom lens zooms and a prime lens doesn't zoom. So you aren't going to be zooming in, wider or narrower views. You're going to have to walk nearer or farther from the subject to be able to change the view of the subject. Now with prime lenses, you have three basic choices: wide angle, normal, or telephoto. A wide angle lens generally shows a view wider than your eyes normally see. A normal lens shows pretty much what your eyes normally see, and a telephoto lens shows a narrower view that brings the subject closer. For fashion and portraiture, the telephoto lens has always been the beauty lens. And if you want to photograph people, I suggest you may want to consider a telephoto lens for your prime lens with a large opening. A telephoto lens helps show less background, helps blur the background. It just does all sorts of neat things that we talk about in my creative photography workshop. So a telephoto lens, if you're photographing people, one that I really recommend. Now it does have a narrower view, so you won't be doing wide-angle shots indoors of full family groups. You'll have your zoom lens for that will go out to wide angle, but it is a great lens for people, also for travel and nature photographs too. Now normal lenses usually cost around $250 for the 1.8 version. If you buy a telephoto lens, it's going to cost more, towards $500 for the 1.8 version, so a telephoto prime lens will cost more than a normal prime lens. Now I know some people love doing wide-angle photographs, so you may want to consider a wide-angle lens as well. Now when I want to take a really wide-angle shot, I usually do stitching. Stitching is where you take multiple photographs and then stitch them together in photo software. So after taking the first photograph, I will take the second photograph overlapping about a third of the image, and then the next photograph overlapping about a third of that. Take them all, put them into photo software, and it goes and puts them all together, and all of a sudden you have this really wide angle shot that was done by combining multiple images. Now you can take stitching photographs handheld. You don't need a tripod. And if you wanted to, you could do 360 degrees of that. So if you're ever going hiking or something and going, I want this really, wide shot, but I'm only seeing this much through my camera, you may want to try stitching, where you take multiple photographs and then put them all together to get that really wide panorama of the scene that you want to capture. Now, when you're looking to buy a wide angle, a normal, or a telephoto lens, it can get a little confusing because of the different image sensor sizes. Lenses are based on their measurements that they had with film cameras. So if you have a full-frame image sensor in your digital camera, it will be 1:1 because a full-frame image sensor is the same size as a 35mm negative. If you have an APS-C sensor, you need to use a 1.5 magnification, so you multiply the lens size by 1.5. If you have a 4/3 image sensor in your digital camera, you will need to multiply the lens size by 2. So if you have a full-frame camera, a 24mm is a wide-angle lens, a 50mm is a normal lens, and a 100mm is a telephoto lens. If you have an APS-C image sensor in your digital camera, you'll need to multiply the millimeter on the lens by 1.5. So a 16mm times 1.5 is 24. So if you want a 24mm equivalent with an APS-C, you buy a 16mm. A 50mm would be about a 35mm times 1.5 is like 52, but that lens can get a little more expensive. So if you're looking for around a normal lens with an APS-C image sensor size, I might suggest the 50mm, often called the Nifty 50, and it's about $250 for the 1.8 version. If you have an APS-C image sensor and you want a telephoto lens, you may want to consider the 85mm, which times 1.5 makes it a 127mm telephoto lens. Now if you have a 4/3 camera and you want a wide-angle lens to get a 24mm wide-angle lens, you would want to buy a 12mm lens, which 2 times 12 is 24. If you wanted a normal lens, you would buy a 25mm lens and times the 2 times magnification factor, 25 times 2 equals 50, to get you a 50mm normal lens. Now if you want a telephoto, you might buy the 45mm, which times the 2 times magnification would give you a 90mm view, or a 60mm, which times 2 would give you a 120mm telephoto lens. Now you can also buy wider lenses than 24mm and longer lenses than 100mm, so you can look and see which lens you like the best. So if you want to be able to really blur the background, if you want help taking photos in low light, or helping you stop action indoors, a large opening lens is a great idea. Why does the magnification factor change with different image sensor sizes? Well, the first thing we have to know is that all lenses are based on film cameras. If it was a 100 millimeter with a film camera, it's a 100 millimeter. If it was a 200 millimeter with a film camera, it's a 200 millimeter. Now, the full frame image sensor for a full frame camera is based on the size of a 35 millimeter negative. So a full frame sensor is the same size that film was. So when you put a 100 millimeter lens on a camera with a full frame sensor, it's a 1-to-1. That 100 millimeter lens is a 100 millimeter lens on a full frame sensor because that's the same size as a film negative. Now, if you put that same 100 millimeter lens on an APS-C sensor, it's a smaller image sensor size, so it gets a 1.5 magnification. So that 100 millimeter lens on a digital camera with an APS-C size sensor will now become a 150 millimeter lens. If you put that same 100 millimeter lens on a 4/3 camera, you will get a 2 times magnification factor. So putting a 100 millimeter lens on a 4/3 camera, it will become a 200 millimeter lens. So if you have a 100 millimeter lens and you put it on a digital camera with a full frame image sensor, it will be 100 millimeter. If you put that same lens on a camera that has an APS-C image sensor, you'll need to multiply it by 1.5, which means you'll have a 150 millimeter view. If you put a 100 millimeter lens on a 4/3 camera, you'll need to multiply by 2, which means that 100 millimeter lens will give you a 200 millimeter view. When looking for a new digital camera, a lot of people spend a lot of time looking at all the technical specifications for the camera they're buying, and that's where a lot of their time and energy is spent. For me, it's more about the category of the camera that fits your lifestyle, what you want to do with it first, and then look at the technical. Now, the thing is about technical settings, if you can buy a camera, no matter how new it is to the market, it's old technology. Because new technology is already on the drawing board, camera manufacturers have plans 5 and 10 years out. So the technology, by the time you can buy it, is actually old technology, and new technology is on the drawing board and will appear in the camera they come out with next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. So going completely by, okay, latest, greatest technology, it's going to fade pretty quickly because we're talking technology. Now, there were some incredible photographs made for fashion covers, for travel photographs, for weddings, for families, for nature photos using 10-year-old technology 10 years ago. Because that's the newest, latest technology they had then, but right now it's 10-year-old technology. And the technology in the camera you can buy today will be old technology 10 years from now. But the thing is, a great photographer uses the technology that they have. And so great covers of magazines, incredible photographs were taken, like I say, 10 years ago with 10-year-old technology. So when you're looking to buy a digital camera, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on, okay, this is the latest and greatest technology, because there's better technology coming along. And I usually tell people, especially if you're buying a camera where you can take the lens off of it, every 3 to 5 years, replace the camera body and you replace the technology with new technology. So going completely with which one has the best technology, if you really want to do that, you can, but understand the technology you buy right now is going to become old technology very quickly. So the first thing I would do in buying a digital camera is find the category that fits you best. Are you going point and shoot? Are you going DSLR? Are you going mirrorless? Are you going with a large sensor, a medium, or a small sensor? How long of a lens do you want to zoom? So there are some very important considerations for finding the best camera for you and how you want to use it. So after you've made those decisions, then you may want to look at the technology, comparing different brands and different models within that category, and with all the other different decisions you've made, looking at the cameras that fit that, and see who has the technology that you like the best. But I wouldn't start out just looking at technology. I would narrow it down to the type of the camera that you want and all the other things, and then look at technology for the ones that fit that category. I've had people ask me, how does a digital camera capture an image? Well, with film cameras, we had film going through the camera, and the film would sit right behind the lens, and that's where it would capture the image. Well, the digital image sensor goes right where the film used to be, so it's positioned behind the lens in the camera body right where the film used to be, and it uses light-sensitive sensors to capture the image. Here you can see we have a picture of an image sensor, and there's a lot of wires and things and electronics going out from it that are used to send the image to the memory card to be saved, as well as other digital camera functions. So once it captures the image, it then transfers it over to a memory card so that it's able to capture another image. Now, when it sends it to the memory card, there's also a little buffer that it sends it into the buffer. So if you're shooting the continuous click, 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 or shooting video, it's able to be sending that information over to the buffer to hold it while it's feeding it over to the memory card. And so that's how you're able to shoot and then shoot again. Now, while an image is being saved to the memory card, you'll generally notice a little green light light up on your camera that says we are writing this information over to the memory card. When the light goes out, it means all the information was written. So digital cameras use digital image sensors, which have little light-sensitive sensors in them that captures the image, and then they send it over to a buffer, which then sends it to the memory card to store it there so that it's able to capture another image. On some point-and-shoot cameras, as well as some digital SLRs and mirrorless cameras, you get a screen that folds out. Sometimes the screen is built into the camera. Sometimes it folds out and it will tilt high or low, so you can hold the camera above your head or lower and tilt the screen to be able to take the photo without having to get to that height or getting down on your knees. You're able to tilt the screen. Some cameras also have it where it flips out and then tilts as well. If you do have one of the screens that flips out, you can also flip it around to where you put it up against the camera and it's the metal side, not the screen side. And this can be helpful if you're traveling and you don't want something to hit it and break the glass. You simply flip it around when you're taking photos. Now, some people really like the screen that flips out, and some people who do vlogging, that's where they hold the camera out and they're videoing themselves. They like to be able to flip the screen up to be able to see themselves on the screen when they're shooting. Also might be helpful if you want to do selfies with your digital camera. So you can see whether having a screen that's built into the camera or one that can flip out or tilt up or down is important to you. With newer digital cameras, there are also some that have a touch screen where you simply touch the screen to bring up the setting or adjust the setting. So you may want to see whether the camera that you're buying has a touch screen. Usually the touch screen is on cameras that cost a little bit more, so it's a feature you may have to pay a little bit more for, but it's something you may want to consider. Do you want a tilting screen and do you want a touch screen? We hope you've enjoyed these photography tips. If you'd like help getting started with your digital camera, you may want to check out our Top 10 Digital Camera Settings worksheet. Looking at your digital camera, there are lots of buttons and symbols and settings which can be confusing. Our Top 10 Digital Camera Settings worksheet will help you learn where these settings are on your camera and the buttons and dials you must use to set them. This worksheet is a great way to get started learning your digital camera. Being able to look at your digital camera and know what the different settings are and how to set them is a great feeling. Knowledge is always your best camera accessory. Download the Top 10 Digital Camera Settings worksheet at easyphotoclass.com to start learning your digital camera settings today. To go to our website, click on our logo at the top of the page for great photography downloads and workshops. To subscribe to our channel, click on our logo in the lower left to enjoy more great photography videos. You can also click on the video image in the lower right to enjoy our next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk with you soon.